The planet Lithera 9 was quiet, but not for long. Its jagged mountains and rocky plains stretched under a pale green sky. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of rushing wind carried the faint echoes of conflict. Kayla, a young alien warrior, crouched behind a large boulder, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Her dark armor was scratched, and the edges of her energy blade flickered weakly from overuse. She had been fighting for hours, her enemies relentless. The alien soldiers chasing her were not ordinary. They were faster, stronger, and more numerous than anyone she had faced before. She had fought bravely, using every trick and skill she had learned. But now she was cornered. She could hear the heavy footsteps of her pursuers getting closer. Her hands gripped her blade tighter, but her energy reserves were almost gone. From the ridge above, a sudden figure appeared. Kayla squinted, trying to see clearly through the dim light. It was a human, a single human. He was small compared to the alien soldiers, and his armor looked ordinary, almost worn. He carried a small sword, nothing like the energy blades or plasma rifles of her enemies. Kayla's mind raced. Could this fragile being possibly help me? Her pride and instinct screamed that it was impossible. Yet in that instant she saw something different in him. There was calm in his eyes, a quiet determination that did not belong to someone who expected to die. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Take my life, or take my side," she said. The words were strange on her tongue, foreign in meaning even to herself. She held her sword forward. Though she knew she might not survive long enough to fight properly, the human hesitated. He stepped forward slowly, his eyes scanning the approaching soldiers. He looked at her, then at the enemies, and then back at her. Kayla saw the brief flicker of doubt cross his face. She did not have time for hesitation. Her life depended on it. Finally, he made a choice. Without a word, Marcus, the human warrior, stepped forward. His small sword glinted in the pale light, but it was his confidence, not the weapon, that mattered. He moved with a strange precision, calculating each step, each angle. Kayla blinked in surprise. He is careful, clever. As the alien soldiers closed in, Marcus did not charge recklessly. Instead, he used the terrain to his advantage. He dodged attacks, drew the enemies toward the uneven ground, and used their weight against them. Each swing of his sword was precise, striking not for sheer force, but for disruption. He was not strong like a trained alien fighter, but he was smart, inventive, and resourceful. Kayla, watching from behind her boulder, realized that this human could actually fight. Her heart pounded, not just with fear, but with a strange curiosity. She had always relied on her strength and her people's training. Yet here was a human, smaller, weaker by all standard measures, holding his own. She took a deep breath and stepped out from cover. "Follow me," she hissed. Her voice was rough, but there was trust in it now. Marcus nodded, and together they moved. The human's small, careful movements complemented her bold, direct attacks. They were an odd pair, yet their actions were synchronized. Kayla began to understand that this partnership might save them both. The battle grew more chaotic as they reached a narrow canyon. The enemy soldiers had numbers, but the terrain favored the defenders. Marcus led them through hidden paths, ducking behind rocks, jumping across cliffs, and setting small traps using debris. Kayla followed closely, impressed by his ingenuity. She realized humans thought differently. They did not fight with brute force. They fought with the mind. At one point, Kayla slipped on loose gravel and nearly fell off a ledge. Marcus grabbed her arm in a swift motion, pulling her to safety. "Thanks," she said, breathless. For a moment, she saw not just the human as an ally, but as a protector. He did not hesitate to risk himself for her, even with his small sword and limited experience. Hours passed, and the alien soldiers continued to pursue them. Kayla felt her strength fading, but Marcus kept moving steadily, never panicking, never losing focus. He studied each enemy, each obstacle, and found ways to use them to their advantage. Kayla, though hesitant at first, began to follow his lead. She adjusted her attacks, using his distractions to strike effectively. By nightfall, they reached a cliff overlooking a deep valley. The stars above were dim through Lithra 9's green-tinted sky, but Kayla barely noticed. Her mind was on survival, on the strange human beside her. "We can rest here for now," she said. Her voice was quieter, almost weary, but she felt a spark of hope. Marcus nodded silently, placing his small sword beside him as he settled down. Kayla watched him for a moment. His calmness in the face of danger was unlike anything she had seen. Among her own people, fear often led to mistakes, and pride often led to death. But humans, they seemed to have a strange courage, a willingness to act even when the odds were against them. She thought back to her whisper, the choice she had given him. Take my life, or take my side. He had chosen her side, not out of duty, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper. The night was quiet, but the danger was not gone. Kayla knew the enemy would not stop until they caught them. She looked at Marcus, and a strange feeling settled in her chest. She had been alone for so long, fighting and surviving without trust. But now, beside this human, she felt a strength she could not explain. Morning came with the sound of distant roars and the glow of Lithra 9's twin suns. Kayla and Marcus moved down into the valley, keeping to the shadows. The alien soldiers had not given up, but the narrow paths and natural obstacles slowed them. Marcus's small sword was light, but in skilled hands it became more than a weapon. It was a tool, a key to survival. Kayla found herself following his instructions more than giving them. He pointed out weak spots, paths to avoid, and ways to use their surroundings. For the first time, she felt like she was part of a team rather than a lone fighter. Her respect for humans grew, along with a curiosity she could not name. As they reached a river cutting through the valley, Kayla paused. She needed water, and she needed time to think. Marcus knelt by the riverbank, cupping his hands to drink. He glanced at her and offered, "You should drink too. We can't make it without strength." His words were simple, but they carried an understanding that surprised her. Kayla knelt beside him, drinking quickly. She looked at him with something between gratitude and admiration. "You are different," she said quietly. Marcus shrugged. "Maybe," he said, "but different doesn't mean weak." His voice had a calm certainty that made her think. Maybe strength wasn't just about power or size. Maybe it was about courage, cleverness, and the willingness to stand when others would fall. Their journey continued, with careful steps and constant alertness. Kayla and Marcus moved like shadows, avoiding enemy patrols and finding ways to disrupt them without direct confrontation. The more Kayla watched him, the more she understood that humans had a way of surviving that relied on thinking ahead, on seeing opportunities where others only saw danger. By midday, they reached a small cave nestled at the edge of a cliff. It was not much, but it would serve as a temporary shelter. Kayla collapsed against the wall, exhausted. Marcus leaned his small sword against the rock and sat nearby, scanning the horizon. "Why did you help me?" Kayla asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. Marcus thought for a moment. "I didn't like seeing someone cornered and alone," he said simply. "You could have died out there, and I didn't want that." Kayla considered his words. She had expected fear, hesitation, maybe even mockery. Instead, she saw compassion and clarity. She realized that humans, though small and seemingly fragile, carried a strength of their own. It was not the same strength she had learned to rely on, but it was just as powerful. The day faded, and Lithra 9's green sky turned darker. Kayla looked at Marcus again. She had whispered the choice, and he had made it. Not just by stepping into the fight, but by staying beside her, by thinking, by risking himself. He had chosen her side, and in doing so, he had changed her world. As night fell fully, Kayla knew the road ahead would be dangerous. They would face more enemies, more challenges. But for the first time, she felt a spark of hope. Not just for herself, but for what humans could bring into her world. Perhaps they were not weak at all. Perhaps in their own strange, unexpected way, they were stronger than anyone could imagine. And with that thought, Kayla closed her eyes for the first time in hours, letting herself rest while the human warrior, small but unyielding, kept watch. The valley where Kayla and Marcus had found shelter was quiet, but the calm was only temporary. Lithra 9 was a dangerous world, full of unpredictable terrain and ruthless soldiers. Kayla had spent countless hours training in combat, yet she found herself increasingly impressed by the human beside her. Marcus, with his small sword and quiet determination, had survived battles that many of her warriors would have thought impossible. Morning light spilled through the cave entrance, casting pale green reflections on the rocky walls. Kayla stretched carefully, wincing as her muscles protested the day before's exertion. Marcus was already up, examining the surrounding cliffs and tracking faint footprints in the dusty ground. His movements were deliberate, efficient, as if every step had a purpose. "You don't rest much," Kayla observed, rubbing her shoulder. Marcus glanced at her with a faint smile. "Rest is important," he said, "but we can't ignore the paths they might take. We need to stay ahead." Kayla studied him. He had a calm focus that she had rarely seen in anyone, alien or human. Even when cornered by multiple enemies, he had never panicked. His strength did not come from muscle or speed, but from observation, clever thinking, and patience. She realized that humans might survive where her own people could fail. After a quick breakfast of rations, Kayla and Marcus moved down the valley. The terrain was rugged, filled with jagged rocks and narrow paths, perfect for ambushes. Kayla led the way, her senses alert, but she now relied on Marcus's advice more than her instincts alone. "There's a ridge above us," he said quietly, pointing to a narrow ledge. "If we climb it, we can see the enemy's movements, but we need to be careful. It's unstable." Kayla nodded. She adjusted her armor and followed his lead, trusting his judgment. As they climbed, she noticed the small sword in his hand. By itself, it seemed fragile, but Marcus handled it with precision and confidence. It was clear that he had trained in a different way, one that emphasized intelligence over raw force. At the top of the ridge, they crouched behind rocks, observing the valley below. Kayla's eyes narrowed as she spotted enemy patrols moving cautiously, scanning the landscape. Marcus pointed out weak points in their formation and suggested subtle ways to mislead them. Kayla was amazed. His ideas were simple yet effective, using shadows, terrain, and timing to create advantages where there were none. "You really think this will work?" she asked, skeptical but intrigued. Marcus's calm gaze met hers. "It has to. Otherwise, we won't make it to the valley safe zone." Kayla studied him for a moment. Humans were often underestimated by her kind, seen as small and fragile. But this one human, with nothing but a small sword and his mind, could change the outcome of their survival. She began to respect him in a way she had not expected. As the day progressed, they moved through the valley carefully, avoiding patrols and finding hidden paths. Marcus's small sword was a tool, not just for fighting but for survival. He used it to pry open narrow passages, test unstable rocks, and even dig small traps to warn of approaching enemies. Kayla found herself following his lead more often than not, realizing that his intelligence and observation could complement her own strength and combat skills. At one point, they came across a small group of alien soldiers blocking their path. Kayla instinctively raised her blade, ready to charge, but Marcus stopped her with a gentle hand. "Wait," he whispered. "We don't need a fight. Watch." Using the shadows and careful timing, Marcus led Kayla behind a large rock formation. They bypassed the soldiers without being seen, using patience and observation rather than direct confrontation. Kayla's admiration for the human grew. She realized that his small size and simple weapon were not weaknesses. They were tools in a strategy that relied on brains, not just strength. After hours of careful movement, they reached a hidden stream flowing through the valley. Water was scarce on Lithera 9, and both were exhausted. They knelt beside the stream to drink, and Kayla finally allowed herself to relax for a moment. "You're good at this," she admitted quietly. "Better than I expected." Marcus shrugged, his expression modest. "I've learned that surviving isn't about being the strongest. It's about thinking ahead, noticing things others miss, and staying calm." Kayla considered his words. Her people had always valued strength and speed above all else. But perhaps humans had something different, something that could turn the tide in impossible situations. Courage, intelligence, and careful action, combined in a way she had never seen before. The sun climbed higher, and they continued moving. Kayla and Marcus came across a small group of alien refugees hiding in the rocks. They were frightened and hungry, and Kayla realized that her actions could make a difference beyond herself. Marcus immediately began helping the group, using his knowledge to organize them, find food, and create safe hiding places. Kayla watched him in silence, impressed by how naturally he took charge. He did not demand respect. He earned it through action and intelligence. That evening, as they set up a temporary camp in a small cave, Kayla finally allowed herself to speak more openly with Marcus. "I have never met a human like you," she said. "You are not like I imagined. You are brave, clever, and calm even in danger." Marcus smiled faintly. "Thanks. I try to do what I can. We all have our strengths. Yours is courage and skill in battle. Mine is observation and planning. Together we can survive." Kayla felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had been alone for so long, relying only on her own strength and training. But now, beside this human, she felt a sense of partnership she had never experienced before. She realized that survival was not just about individual skill. It was about trust and teamwork. During the night, Kayla stayed awake longer than Marcus, keeping watch over their small group. She studied the human quietly, noticing how he had a sense of calm even in the darkest hours. He did not panic, did not make rash decisions, and always found ways to keep others safe. Kayla wondered if all humans were like this, or if Marcus was unique. As the stars appeared in the green-tinted sky, Marcus spoke softly. "You've done well today," he said. "Without your skill in combat, we wouldn't have made it this far." Kayla shook her head. "No. Without your strategy, observation, and quick thinking, we would be dead. We need each other to survive." The moment lingered between them, a quiet understanding. Kayla realized that humans brought a strength that was different but equal to hers. Courage and intelligence, combined with careful planning, could overcome challenges that sheer power alone could not. She felt a newfound respect for the human beside her, and perhaps a trust that went beyond necessity. The next day they moved again, this time toward a ridge overlooking the valley's exit. Marcus led the way, carefully scouting for signs of the enemy. Kayla followed, her energy returning slowly with every step, inspired by his confidence and careful planning. At the top of the ridge, they paused. The valley stretched out below, and Kayla spotted movement, enemy scouts searching for them. Marcus whispered instructions, pointing out paths and weak spots. Together, they devised a plan to reach safety without confrontation. Kayla realized that she was learning from him as much as he relied on her strength. The descent was tricky. Narrow ledges, sharp rocks, and hidden pitfalls threatened their progress. But Marcus guided them carefully, using the terrain to their advantage. Kayla felt a strange thrill. She had faced many battles, but this felt different. It was not just skill that would save them. It was partnership, trust, and careful strategy. By midday, they reached the edge of a small forest that marked the valley's exit. They paused, catching their breath. Kayla looked at Marcus, who had been steady and calm throughout the journey. She realized that this human, so small by alien standards, had changed the way she saw strength and courage. "We made it this far," Marcus said quietly. "But the journey isn't over. We have more challenges ahead." Kayla nodded. "I know, but now, I believe we can face them, together." For the first time in hours, maybe even days, Kayla felt hope. Not just hope for survival, but hope in what humans could bring to her world. Marcus had shown her that courage was not about size or power. It was about intelligence, action, and heart. As they moved into the forest, Kayla felt a sense of partnership she had never known. She knew dangers still awaited them, but with Marcus by her side, she felt ready. The human with the small sword had become more than an ally. He was a companion she could trust, a symbol of unexpected strength, and a reminder that courage came in many forms. And so, Kayla and Marcus continued their journey, stepping into the unknown of Lithera 9, ready to face whatever came next. Together, they had survived battles that neither could have faced alone, and the bond they shared grew stronger with each step. The valley behind them faded, but the path ahead promised adventure, challenge, and the chance to discover that even in a harsh, alien world, hope could thrive when courage and partnership met. The forest stretched endlessly before Kayla and Marcus, its twisted trees and thick underbrush creating shadows that shifted with the wind. Every step was careful, deliberate, because danger was never far behind on Lithera 9. Kayla's muscles were sore from the long journey, but her mind was alert. She had learned to trust Marcus, and that trust had saved her life more than once. "This way," Marcus whispered, pointing toward a narrow path hidden between the thick trunks. "The scouts haven't been here recently. If we stay low and move slowly, we can avoid detection." Kayla nodded, following closely. Her eyes scanned the forest, noting the subtle movements of birds and insects, all signs that helped them gauge the presence of enemies. She had relied on her instincts before, but now she relied as much on Marcus's guidance. His small sword, though modest, was always ready in his hand, a silent symbol of his resourcefulness. Hours passed as they moved quietly through the forest. Occasionally, Kayla would hear faint rustling in the leaves, but Marcus always anticipated it. He would freeze, study the movement, and decide whether it was a threat or just the wind. Kayla began to appreciate the patience and careful observation he displayed. Humans, she realized, had a way of noticing things that even seasoned alien warriors could miss. As they reached a clearing, Kayla spotted smoke rising in the distance. Her heart skipped a beat. "Enemy camp," she whispered. She could see several tents and hear voices carrying across the forest. The aliens were preparing for a large-scale assault, and if Kayla and Marcus were discovered, they would be in serious danger. Marcus crouched beside her, eyes narrowing. "We can't fight them head-on. There are too many. But we can create a distraction and slip past while they're confused." Kayla studied him, her admiration growing. He wasn't relying on brute force. He was relying on strategy, timing, and clever use of the terrain. She realized that humans had a different kind of strength, one that could outthink and outmaneuver even the strongest enemies. Together, they prepared their plan. Marcus picked up small branches and rocks, arranging them to create noise in different directions. Kayla would draw the first wave of attention, using her energy blade to appear threatening but not fatal, while Marcus guided the rest of their path through the shadows. As the first enemy patrol approached, Kayla stepped out, swinging her blade in wide, controlled arcs. The light from her weapon reflected across the clearing, catching the eyes of the soldiers. They shouted and advanced, but the noise from the carefully placed branches and rocks distracted them, splitting their focus. Marcus moved quickly, guiding the hidden group of refugees through a side path. Kayla could feel her adrenaline rising. Every movement mattered. One misstep could alert the enemy and ruin the plan. But she trusted Marcus completely. His eyes were always scanning, calculating, predicting what the enemy would do next. He was small and seemingly ordinary, but in moments like this, his mind was sharper than any weapon she had ever seen. By the time the patrol realized they had been tricked, Kayla and Marcus had already guided the group past the clearing. The alien soldiers were confused, shouting orders, but it was too late. Marcus had anticipated their movements perfectly. Kayla couldn't help but feel awe at his skill. A human with a small sword and calm nerves had outmaneuvered an entire patrol of trained soldiers. They continued moving through the forest, now more cautious than ever. Kayla's body was tired, but her spirit was strengthened by the human's ingenuity. She had faced countless enemies before, but none had shown her the kind of cleverness and courage that Marcus did. She realized that humans could survive where others would fail, not through raw power, but through strategy, observation, and calm determination. As evening fell, they reached a rocky ridge overlooking a narrow valley. Kayla spotted more enemy troops setting up barricades and preparing for an attack. Marcus studied the positions carefully, then turned to her. "We can't fight them all directly, but if we set traps and use the terrain, we can hold them off long enough to escape." Kayla nodded. She followed his instructions, helping set small pitfalls and arranging rocks to create obstacles. Marcus guided every movement, demonstrating how even a small sword and human intelligence could influence the outcome of a battle. Kayla's respect for him grew with each passing moment. When the first wave of enemies arrived, Kayla and Marcus were ready. The traps slowed them, the obstacles disrupted their formations, and Marcus's quick thinking allowed them to exploit every opening. Kayla fought alongside him, her energy blade striking with precision, guided by Marcus's instructions. Together, they became a seamless team. During the battle, Kayla was injured by a glancing strike. She stumbled, pain shooting through her arm. Marcus didn't hesitate. He moved beside her, blocking an enemy's attack with his small sword and pulling her to safety. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Kayla nodded, catching her breath. "Thanks. I would have fallen if not for you." Marcus shook his head. "We watch out for each other. That's how we survive." The enemies eventually retreated, shocked and frustrated by the unexpected resistance. Kayla looked at Marcus, her chest swelling with admiration. This human, who appeared small and fragile compared to the alien soldiers, had turned the battle in their favor with clever tactics and calm courage. She realized that humans were not to be underestimated. Their strength was different, but no less powerful. That night, Kayla and Marcus rested in a small cave near the valley's edge. The stars of Lithera 9 twinkled through the gaps in the cliffs, and the quiet night was a welcome relief after the chaos of the day. Kayla sat beside Marcus, studying him carefully. "You were amazing today," she said quietly. I don't think any of my people could have done what you did. Marcus smiled faintly. It's not just me. It's you too. Without your skill and bravery, none of this would have worked. Kayla considered his words. She had always thought strength was measured by combat skill alone. But now she realized that intelligence, strategy, and courage were equally important. Marcus had taught her a lesson she would not forget. Sometimes the mind was mightier than the blade. The following days were spent moving cautiously through the valley, avoiding patrols and finding safe paths. Kayla and Marcus grew even closer, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses. Kayla taught Marcus about alien combat techniques, while Marcus showed her how to use terrain, observation, and timing to their advantage. One afternoon, they encountered a deep ravine blocking their path. Kayla scanned the area, considering a dangerous leap across the chasm. Marcus shook his head. "There's a safer way," he said. "Follow me." Using small branches, rocks, and vines, Marcus created a makeshift bridge and guided Kayla across. She marveled at his creativity. Where she had relied on strength and speed, he had relied on thought and ingenuity. Together, they overcame the obstacle without harm. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, they had grown inseparable. Kayla realized that the human beside her was more than just an ally. He was a symbol of hope and ingenuity. His courage, intelligence, and calm determination had saved them multiple times. She felt a bond forming, stronger than she had ever felt with anyone. At the forest's edge, they paused to look back. The valley behind them was dangerous and unpredictable, but they had survived together. Kayla turned to Marcus. "I never imagined a human could be like this," she said. "You are stronger than I ever expected." Marcus looked at her calmly. "Strength isn't always about size or power. Sometimes it's about courage, cleverness, and trust. We've survived because we trusted each other and acted together." Kayla smiled, feeling a warmth she had not known in years. She realized that the human beside her was not just a warrior. He was a companion, a guide, and a reminder that even in the harshest worlds, hope and partnership could prevail. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the valley, Kayla and Marcus prepared to move toward the next challenge. The enemy was still out there, and more dangers awaited, but together they were unstoppable. The bond they had forged through battle, strategy, and trust was unbreakable. Kayla's thoughts returned to her first words to Marcus. "Take my life, or take my side." He had chosen her side, not out of obligation, but out of courage and understanding. She realized that humans were capable of extraordinary things, and that with them, even the most impossible challenges could be overcome. With the night settling over Lithera 9, Kayla and Marcus stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. They had survived impossible battles, outsmarted enemy soldiers, and discovered a partnership that could change the fate of many. In Marcus, Kayla had found not just a human ally, but a symbol of courage, ingenuity, and the power of trust. And as they moved together into the darkness, Kayla knew one thing for certain. Humans were not to be underestimated. With courage, cleverness, and heart, they could turn the tide of any battle, survive the harshest worlds, and forge bonds that even the strongest enemies could not break. The forest opened into a wide plateau, the ground sloping gently toward a distant canyon. Kayla and Marcus moved carefully, knowing the enemy was still tracking them. The battles had been intense, but both were stronger now, not just physically, but in understanding each other's abilities. They had learned to fight as a team, each movement complementing the other. Marcus scanned the horizon. "The enemy's main camp is just beyond that ridge," he said quietly. "If we move quickly and smartly, we can avoid a direct fight, or at least minimize the danger." Kayla nodded. Her arm was still sore from previous skirmishes, but her energy had returned. She drew her blade, the hum of its energy filling the quiet air. Beside her, Marcus held his small sword firmly, every inch of him calm and ready. Kayla marveled again at how he could stand so steadily, despite facing countless enemies with only a small weapon. The two moved in silence, sticking to shadows and low terrain. Marcus led the way, choosing paths that gave them both cover and observation points. Kayla followed closely, trusting him completely. It amazed her how a human, so small in size, could think ahead and anticipate danger with such precision. As they approached the ridge, Kayla spotted the enemy camp below. Tents, guards, and energy weapons were spread across the flat land. The main force was larger than she had imagined, but Marcus did not falter. He studied the formations, pointing out weaknesses and timing for movement. "We can pass through the western edge," he whispered. "The guards there change shifts in a few minutes. We move then." Kayla nodded silently. She had fought countless battles, yet she found herself learning from him. He was patient, clever, and fearless in a quiet way. She realized humans were not weak. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and determined. When the time came, they moved swiftly and silently. Marcus led Kayla along a narrow ridge that offered cover from the guard's sight. Every step was precise, every movement calculated. Kayla felt a thrill of admiration. Humans had a way of surviving that relied not on raw strength, but on intelligence, timing, and courage. As they reached the edge of the camp, a sudden movement caught Kayla's eye. A pair of guards had spotted them. Marcus reacted instantly. He lunged forward with his small sword, but not to attack directly. Instead, he used a combination of speed and clever maneuvers to disarm and distract them without serious harm. Kayla followed, her energy blade creating a controlled flash that drew attention away from their escape path. The guards shouted, and the camp erupted into action, but it was too late. Marcus had already led Kayla and the refugees through a hidden path he had spotted earlier. Rocks, trees, and small cliffs concealed their movements perfectly. Kayla marveled at his skill. A human, with nothing but a small sword, had guided them past a heavily armed enemy camp without serious confrontation. Once they were safely past the camp, they paused to catch their breath. Kayla looked at Marcus, admiration shining in her eyes. "I don't think I've ever seen a warrior like you," she said softly. "Not even among my people." Marcus shook his head. "It's not about being the strongest. It's about thinking, observing, and staying calm. Courage isn't just charging forward, it's knowing when and how to act." Kayla realized he was right. Her people had valued strength and speed above all else, but humans had a different kind of power. It was a quiet, steady force that came from trust, intelligence, and heart. She felt grateful that this human had chosen her side not out of duty, but because he understood the value of partnership. The final challenge awaited them as they entered a narrow canyon. The enemy, frustrated by their previous escapes, had set up a defensive barricade. Energy turrets scanned the area, and soldiers moved in formation. Kayla's first instinct was to charge, but Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "Wait," he said. "We can't go in blind. We need a plan." Kayla took a deep breath and nodded. Together, they studied the formation. Marcus pointed out weak points in the enemy lines and suggested a combination of distraction, traps, and careful movement. Kayla felt a thrill of excitement. She had faced many battles, but this was different. It was not just skill that would win. They needed teamwork, strategy, and trust. When the time came, they moved with precision. Kayla led the first distraction, her energy blade flashing and drawing attention. Marcus guided the refugees and remaining allies through hidden paths, avoiding the main line of defense. The small sword in his hand became a tool for timing, coordination, and clever maneuvers. Every step he took was calculated, every movement deliberate. The enemy soldiers were confused, struggling to respond to the unexpected tactics. Kayla and Marcus worked seamlessly together, combining alien combat skill and human ingenuity. They set traps, blocked attacks, and guided the refugees safely through the canyon. Kayla realized that survival was no longer about individual strength. It was about partnership and trust. During the final moments of the confrontation, a heavily armed alien soldier charged at Kayla. She swung her blade, but her energy was low, and the strike alone might not be enough. Marcus acted instantly. With a swift maneuver, he intercepted the soldier, using his small sword to disarm and redirect the attack. Kayla's eyes widened in admiration. The human's quick thinking had saved her once again. Together, they pushed forward, and the enemy, unable to anticipate their clever tactics, finally retreated. The canyon fell silent, and the survivors looked to Kayla and Marcus with relief and gratitude. Kayla felt a surge of pride, not just in herself, but in the human who had stood beside her through every challenge. As night fell over Lithera 9, Kayla and Marcus found a high cliff overlooking the valley below. They sat side by side, watching the stars glimmer through the green-tinted sky. The danger was not gone, but for the first time, Kayla felt hope. They had faced overwhelming odds and survived, not through sheer strength alone, but through courage, intelligence, and partnership. Kayla turned to Marcus. "You've changed my view of humans," she said softly. "I thought you were small, weak, but you've proven that courage and cleverness are stronger than raw power." Marcus smiled faintly. "Strength isn't just muscle, it's heart, mind, and trust. You've shown me the same. Together we've survived because we acted as a team." Kayla nodded, feeling a deep sense of connection. She realized that humans could change the fate of worlds, not through domination, but through courage, cleverness, and understanding. Marcus had taught her a lesson she would never forget. In the following days, Kayla and Marcus led the survivors safely to a hidden settlement. The refugees were exhausted but alive, thanks to the careful planning and bravery of both warriors. Kayla observed how humans and aliens could work together, learning from each other's strengths and weaknesses. She felt a deep sense of hope for the future, realizing that humans could truly make a difference in the galaxy. Finally, standing at the edge of the settlement, Kayla reflected on her journey. She remembered the moment she whispered to Marcus, "Take my life, or take my side." He had chosen her side, not out of obligation, but because he understood courage, partnership, and the value of life. That choice had saved countless lives and forged a bond stronger than any weapon. Kayla looked at Marcus, who was quietly observing the horizon. She felt admiration, respect, and a strange warmth. He had proven that humans, though small and seemingly ordinary, could accomplish extraordinary things. His courage, intelligence, and heart had turned the impossible into reality. "Thank you," Kayla said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't just save my life, you saved many others, and you taught me a lesson I will never forget." Marcus looked at her calmly, his eyes reflecting the soft light of the twin moons. "We saved each other," he said, "and that's what matters. Courage isn't about being the strongest. It's about doing what is right, even when it's hard." Kayla smiled, feeling a sense of peace and hope. The battles were over for now, but the lessons she had learned would stay with her forever. Humans were not to be underestimated. Their courage, cleverness, and heart could change the galaxy. As they watched the stars together, Kayla realized that she had found more than an ally in Marcus. She had found a partner, a friend, and a symbol of hope. Together, they had survived impossible odds, outsmarted powerful enemies, and discovered the strength that comes from trust and unity. The wind of Lithera 9 carried a quiet promise. The galaxy was vast, filled with challenges, but Kayla knew that as long as humans and aliens stood together, no threat was too great. She felt a new confidence, not just in herself, but in the unexpected strength of humanity. And with that thought, Kayla and Marcus turned toward the settlement, ready to face the future. The journey had been perilous, but it had forged a bond that would endure. Together, they had proven that courage, intelligence, and trust could overcome any obstacle. Humanity had shown its strength, and Kayla would never doubt it again.